Okay, we're trying this again because my computer just went a little wonky on me. So here we are, we're looking at the work of Georgia O'Keeffe. And Georgia O'Keeffe is famous for her paintings of flowers. And one thing that makes her work special is how zoomed in, how cropped or up close all of her work is. So if you can see some of these as I'm going, some of them you can't even tell what they are because they're so close in, and some you can clearly tell that they're flowers. So we're gonna make a piece of art based on her work today. And the first thing you're gonna need is a piece of paper, a pencil. I'm gonna be using oil pastels just because it'll help me cover a lot of space quickly in the video, but crayons work totally fine for this. And then again, watercolor if you have watercolor. If not, this is completely fine done as a pencil drawing or as even just a crayon project. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look at a flower, and I have a sunflower here, and this guy hasn't opened up all the way yet, but I'm gonna look at it, and I wanna look at the patterns that are on the inside. And you don't have to do a sunflower, you can do anything you want. Can you see that? Can you see the patterns inside? Little itty bitty coils going around in there. And then I also want to look at the leaves and the petals. So the petals here, I notice they're tiny at the beginning. They get wider, 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 and then they get tiny again. And there's also a set of pointed green leaves on the outside before it goes down. So that's what I'm gonna focus on for my artwork. You can pick any flower you want. You can even make up your own flower. But in sticking with the traditional style of Georgia O'Keeffe, I wanna try to use as much of my paper as possible. So I might make the center of my flower somewhere like that. And then I'm gonna start to add my petals in. And the sunflower petals, we notice they start small and they get bigger as they go out, right? And they small and bigger as they go out. And I'm gonna keep layering these until I fill up my whole paper. All right, and then what else did I notice? It had different layers of petals behind it, so I might add another one back here, another one back there, one there, and I can add some of the green in for after. It doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to put in some of this texture that we had so that I don't forget that there was all those wonderful circular patterns on the inside. Okay. All right. And now I'm going to take my pastels and I'm going to begin to color it in. And you can stick with the color scheme that the flower actually is, or you could do your own thing. I'm gonna stick with the color scheme that the flower actually is. And I'm just putting down lots of lines of color. As you can see, oil pastels color very much like a crayon. They just take up a lot of extra space much quicker. And I'm not gonna color in every single part of this. I'm only gonna color in the bigger areas, and I'm gonna use watercolor to finish filling this in after. Okay. Carly's next to me doing the Kandinsky project from yesterday. So I'm wondering to see who's going to choose which projects this week. Okay. So I like to turn my paper as I go. And again, I'm going quickly. I probably would take my time and really dissect the flower and look at it and see what it comes up with in terms of all the different colors I see inside. Okay. But for right now, I just want to get the color laid out. All right, maybe a little bit of this bright yellow. And as you can see, I'm kind of just scribbling layers of color down. Nothing too fancy because we're going to add watercolor to fill the rest in. And I know that some of these are actually going to be bright yellow when they blossom, so I'm going to fill that in. Okay, how about a little dark brown? And you don't have to stick with the same colors. I could do the center of this blue, and that's fine too. It's your artwork. It doesn't have to necessarily represent everything real. I might just do some swirls here and there. Just to fill everything in and give it some texture. Okay, we're getting further. How about a little bit of green? Let's see. To represent those green petals underneath. Make this guy yellow too. He wants to be part of it. And again, you do not need oil pastels to do this project. I'm just doing them because this is a lot of area to color, and I don't want you guys to have to sit on this video and watch me color forever. Unless you'd want to, but I don't think you do. I think you'd probably rather color yourself. Okay, and then I'm just gonna get a couple layers down in the outside just to fill it up. Yellow and blue, why not? That'll be my background. And even pop in a little purple. Really, you're just trying to fill up space. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead onto my watercolor and use that to fill up the rest of this, and I'll show you how to do that. Get it a little bit darker. Okay, so now watercolor. We're going to be doing a resist again. So just like many of the other projects we've done here at Art at Home, if you paint with watercolor and you're putting it on a substance that has wax, so a crayon or oil pastel, it's not going to stick. You can paint right on top. I'm going to start with my lightest colors first because I don't want my brush to get all yucky. So I'm going to swirl and swirl and swirl until I get that nice yellow ochre color. And a little fun tidbit that I'll tell you today is that if you do a drawing in oil pastel, they look like crayons and you hold them like a crayon or a pencil and you're actually drawing with it. But when you finish the project, it actually isn't called an oil pastel drawing, it's called an oil pastel painting. Isn't that funny? I never understood why, but it was one of those things that always stuck with me because I thought it was really interesting. So there you go. Now you know a little bit about the correct terminology for oil pastel. Okay, so I'm just flying through this, getting my paint down, because you don't have to be super duper neat. The paint is not going to stick behind the oil pastel. It's only going to stick where you have white paper showing through. Okay. If you're watching this, this is the one you chose to do this week. Please, please, please send me a picture of something you've been creating so I can put it in the digital art show. That would be really wonderful to have everybody turn something in so that we can see what you've been up to since you've been home, or something you created earlier in the year. I'll be going in a few weeks to try to sort and organize everything to get it ready to come home. Okay, almost through. And I won't paint this whole thing on video. This is just to give you an idea how to lay down the colors. But one thing I do want to show you is that you can add in, I'm going to add in brown on my edges because I want it to have a little bit of a shadow, a little bit of depth. And the more colors you use and the more layers you do, the more depth your image will have. Can you see that? Can you see the difference between this side versus the other side? Okay. And when I'm all done with this, I think I might even take a darker oil pastel and retrace my lines. But I'll have to see what it looks like. Okay. So again, this is called a watercolor resist because the wax in the oil pastel, or in the crayon if that's what you're using, will resist the water. So for this center part, just like here how I have the yellow, I don't have to worry about painting over that. I can paint this whole entire center right over it. And I'm not going to lose my oil pastel. Okay. And I'll go a little bit more. Feel free to stop watching now if you get it. I'm just going to go with it because it's fun. I'm going to continue painting in. I'm going to try to stick with the colors that I have from my oil pastels, but if you wanted to mix things up and put red over your blue or pink over your orange, or really whatever you want, that works too because it's your art. It's your job as an artist is to decide what you want your final piece to look like. Okay. And again, the trick to this, to making it in the style of Georgia O'Keeffe, is to really zoom down in close to the center of that flower. Have it take up as much room on the page as possible. And I'm going to mix a green and a yellow for this last part. Because I think that'll make an accurate color. All right. And there we have it. I'm going to finish painting this and I'll post the final picture after I'm done. But I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. All right, have fun.